hello. Hello, hello, hello,
Hello.
hello, hello.
Hi.
Hello, everybody.
Welcome.
Welcome to another awesome live where today we're going to be talking about the lies we tell ourselves as people, as coaches, how it applies to coaching, why that's important. And really, we're going to begin with a space of sort of useful delusions, those things that we tell ourselves that are kind of important that it is that we do. And then also maybe how do we approach that with our clients if they're and to being able to differentiate between what is serving them and what isn't, and when to delve there and when not, perhaps. Before we delve into all of that awesomeness, I want to remind everybody out there watching to please leave comments. We want to hear from you. We do this live so that we can hear from you. We want your input. We want your feedback. If you have questions, comments, anything, please drop them in the chat, and we will do our best to go ahead and answer those questions for you. I did everything today, so somebody else take over. I have talked enough. Is it me? Is there an? I'll make it.
A little bit. It's not as bad as sometimes it gets. Is there an echo with me? We got this.
I think it might also be my fan. I don't know. Better? Worse? Better?
The cat on the mantle. Oh, so cute.
That's danger.
So I wanted to start by asking, is there a difference between lies and delusions, or lying and delusions? Because I think there's important distinction there, where sometimes people think that they're just the same.
I think lies are more associated to outward projection of something that isn't true. I think delusion is more inward. That's something that you yourself sit with. I think it's a little bit more difficult to go out and say that you made somebody delusional, but it makes much more sense to go out and just say I lied to somebody if that is making sense. To me, that's where I come from on that stance.
I would say that a lie includes intent, whereas delusion may not necessarily include intent.
Yeah, I'll second that. I'm with you. I'm
Yeah.
with you, Jen, on that.
So essentially, when we lie to ourselves, like if we're just talking about lying to ourselves, not to other people, lying to yourself is you say you're going to do something internally, but you know it's not true, or you say something that you just know is patently false. Like if I said, I'm going to go to the gym after this, but I really know I'm going to take a nap. That's lying to myself. A delusion, though, would be something that you believe to be true, even though, objectively speaking, it's false, or the evidence against it is so overwhelming, even though you still believe it to be true. So it would be a good example of a delusion.
Well, I think also, just to clarify, I think it's not even when you say the evidence against it is overwhelmingly false or what have you. I'm not even going to bring evidence into this because it's really that it's something that we adopt to be a truth, to be a reality, to be our reality, our subjective reality. Often it may not actually align with what is true reality. So it's really the difference between objective reality and subjective reality, I think, kind of. And I think that we as people often forget that everything we experience is subjective. So objectivity is an impossibility as a human being. So that's the first delusion right there.
Yeah, but sometimes people's subjective realities, like they are more aligned with objective reality than other people's. And if we're talking about evidence, let's say I didn't believe, 100% did not believe that climate change was a thing, despite the overwhelming evidence that is contrary to that. Would that be a delusion? I'm deluding myself of the truth, or at least what the overwhelming evidence suggests the truth is.
Anthony, time is an illusion.
Okay, I'm starting with surface level stuff, Brooke, before we get into like deeper crap like that.
I know. I just think that's an odd suggestion. I would go somewhere more like in the direction of the example that government, even not even government, but basically the structure of what we accept to be society is in many ways delusion. The line where Canada begins and the United States is kind of an arbitrarily set thing that we have set as human beings, but it's a construct we all live by, right? And we accept it's true. Other than a sign that somebody puts up, how do I know if I'm in California and I'm in, Arizona or Nevada without a sign there, right? There's no like that's a delineation we have created, and that is strictly us thing. So is it truth? And this is when my brain starts to hurt. Oh.
I'm not sure. I'm not going to say it's sure because I don't know what other people think. I would be presuming to say that it's a delusion that I live in the state of California, or things like I live in America. They're not delusional if you accept the fact that they are societal like constructs of that nature. Then it's not delusion. You just know that it's an idea. It's like the same thing as money.
It's a shared delusion, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's a shared delusion, but you know that it's a delusion. If you know it's a delusion, then it stops being a delusion, right?
I don't know about that.
I don't know about that because I don't know that that's 100% true. Lisa, do you want to share?
I just, it's such we're talking in black and white, which is not normally where we operate from, which is kind of the hiccup that we're going on, because if we go, it's true or false, is it a delusion? Well, there's lots of gray in that space there. How do we get into defining what's gray in this? Because if it's true, I'm delusional, but I don't know I'm in a delusion, and I don't agree with the general consensus, then what I am in is not a delusion, it's a truth, right?
Again, it falls into this weird space of the fact that whatever it is that we are experiencing is truly a subjective experience, right? Yeah. It is truly an experience that is run through our own filters, this unique filter. I am, a unique person with unique experiences. I'll run through this. So I'm not capable of understanding anything in an objective way. So it's hard to say what is and what isn't, right? Even making the delineation kind of defeats the purpose of the conversation. For the sake of this conversation, before we end up off in the weeds, though, there are some very constructive lies that we sort of, as people, tell ourselves, or even if it may not be a lie, they are delusions we accept. What might some of those be?
I know there's sometimes, whenever I tell myself, I don't want to go to the gym, I tell myself I've got to be a bit delusional to get past that hurdle. So I pretend like I'm not going to, have to drive 20 minutes to go get to the gym. I pretend that time is not going to be lost. I pretend that it's not going to hurt when I'm lifting up these heavy weights. These are, to me, delusions because these things are going to happen. But I pretend that they don't, because I know at the end of the day, the benefit outweighs the negatives that I see occurring in that scenario.
So what's the difference between a delusion and a self-manipulation? Because to me, it sounds like you're manipulating yourself in that moment to allow. Is it one and the same? I hadn't thought about that till we just were talking.
Nor I do think they're closely associated.
I think it goes back to that definition of what is a lie and what is a delusion. Is that lie is something we intentionally do and create and manipulate, but the delusion is perhaps something that we just accept. A good example, I think, of this, and one that applies maybe in coaching, and it might be a little controversial, is that one of the things I think we say is, and it might tap into, again, this might be a little, some people may not agree, but is that if I am good things will happen. As if, bad things don't happen to good people. So as long as I am acting in good, being good, then bad things will not happen to me. And we all know that that's not true, but we often live in that space of if I keep acting, behaving, and doing good things will happen. Why do you think that's useful?
It's useful because it helps people get through the day, essentially, or at least give some life some sort of meaning. I mean, that's like just believing in karma, essentially, that if you put good in the world, good will come back to you. If you're a bad person, bad things ought to happen to you. But that's not really the case. Like, plenty of good things happen to bad people, and plenty of bad things happen to good people, and sometimes it doesn't ever end well. Um, the reason why people tell themselves that is the case because it sounds awful to be living in that kind of world. You want to reassure yourself that there is some sort of justice in the world, whether it's, you know, religious justice or non-religious justice, that karma in that way exists, but that's not always the case.
Do you think it's about attachment to, what we want our outcome to be?
I think that it's that we are hardwired to be somewhat optimistic, and to as much as we have a negative brain bias, right? We have that negative brain bias, but we have to believe on some level that what we want and what is possible, right? And that the things we do are meaningful, and that all of these things are true, and we will find ways. And I'm not saying that they're not at all in this state. This is not that black and white thinking, but it is that, agreed, it's a sense of control, it's a sense of safety that comes with that. But I also think we have to have a reason to get out of bed every day and function and go about our daily life. And if we didn't have hope, I don't think a lot of us would do those things. And so I think hope is a very important part of this, but hope can sometimes be a bit of a delusion. Another example is people, I don't know how many startups there are a year that come out a year, people, tons of businesses. 90% of them will fail. Statistics will tell you 90% of them will fail, but people go out and start businesses every day, all the time. And you have to be an optimist to be to be in business. You really do. And it's because those 10% that succeed that you have the 90% who fail still willing to get out there and try.
Which is funny because if you believe in karma, then you believe that the people who did succeed in business did so because they were good people or smart or whatever. And the 90% of people who failed for a reason. Either they're bad or they just didn't do good enough, or they didn't put enough karma out there in the world. To add to that, another delusion that I just thought of that I see a lot in, like, I don't know, I guess millennials and Zoomers, TikTok or whatever, about like workplace reform and other things like that. The delusion that hard work leads to success.
Mm.
The hard work and success, that's a gap of logic that's happening there. Hard work in of itself does not lead to success. Just by itself. And a lot of people delude themselves or have deluded themselves into thinking that's true, and they end up spinning their wheels and they're not getting anywhere, and they're putting a lot of hard work out there and they're not seeing any results. Sometimes you need to get lucky, other times you need to be privileged, or other times you need to work smarter, not harder.
That's what I say, yeah, smart work.
But hard work alone doesn't automatically means you're going to be successful in whatever endeavor you do.
And I'll take it one further. I think that any person that thinks that they're going to be successful solo, like they're going to achieve their success without enlisting the help of others, that's a big old delusion. But also it depends on how you're defining success. But I mean, not always the case. I think though too, these are kind of more. These are things that we can very easily see, and we can but perhaps what are the delusions that our clients might be coming into us having, and maybe ones we don't want to touch, or an example of one perhaps, and if we do go there or we don't go there, because there are times that when we go, oh, wow, that's a delusion, that it could be very dangerous to break that delusion.
I can give a scenario. A lot of the times clients will come in because I'm a couples coach, so I'm working with couples. So as they'll say, should we stay together? And the delusion that a coach could get is by answering that question, because you have no idea whether someone can stay together or not until they do the work. The idea, should they stay together, and the coach responding, the delusion that's going to occur in that space is that couple may break up in that moment, but guess what? They'll get back together that next week, and you're the one who broke them up. So the delusion side of things is, don't confuse yourself that you're the advice giver. You are not that advice giver, right? And that's another reason to stay true to the coaching model, is you've got to find out what their belief system is and break it down.
I can think of a few examples as a coach where,
Mhm.
well, when a coach says, I know what somebody should do in this situation, or says, I've been in this exact situation, or says, I know what's best in this situation, we have a failing. Because and a bit of a delusion, because what you're not doing as a coach is acknowledging that your client in fact knows what's best for themselves. And so that, I think, is a big shared delusion of a lot of folks who go into this mental health industry and go into, more specifically, the coaching industry before they find out what it is that fixer.
And they want to argue. They want to argue that position, that they have that training, they know better than the client. And by golly, they're going to tell that client, let's just say you are a nutritionist. Yes, you've got the training. Yes, you've got the information. But if the client is coming to you as a coach, that's not your place to be telling them how they got it wrong. It's helping them identify what their body needs, what ways they can find out what their body needs, what a nutrition typically does, maybe small teachable moments, but not tell that client. And that really, anybody that comes from something similar, that kind of position, cannot understand how to coach that client to find their truth, because they don't think that they can find their truth. They are true believers that the client won't be able to find their answer.
I've got a question that might be equivalent to coaching heresy here, so just bear with me. I'm playing
Coaching
devil's
heresy. Woo!
Is it a delusion to say that the client knows what's best for them?
They may not know until they are given that space to discover what that answer is.
I think what serves in this space is probably the fact that you don't know better than the client, which is something important to keep in mind.
The reason I bring that up, because there may come a time where the client doesn't know what is best for them. And I'm speaking in the realm of like mental health.
Mm-hmm.
And if the coach is under the delusion that the client always knows what's best for them, it might lead to situations where a coach doesn't offer a referral or the support needed for the client to go and seek help from somebody who does know what's best, in terms of a therapist or a psychiatrist, or in an emergency, God forbid, an emergency situation comes up. But I'm speaking more of like general mental health, where the client might not be an expert or know best as to how to diagnose or treat their own mental well-being.
Mm-hmm.
And neither does the coach, but the coach at least should know when to refer out.
Good point. There's exceptions to every rules, right? Totally medical needs and necessities definitely are the place to have that referral.
So
for sure.
I want to have a little fun in this space. In some of the research we did for this podcast, one of the real life scenarios given was there was a group of gentlemen, or there was one gentleman that was writing letters to a group of gentlemen, and he was posing as a woman, as various women. He called them his angels, and would, for years, decades, was writing to men, and these men fell in love with him, but he was so successful in his, even though it was mail fraud, in his writings and in his ability to create this delusion, that these men became very attached to the love story that they had, so much so that they testified for him. So if we as a coach have a client who walks through the door, right, and is telling you about their internet love story, and in our mind we are thinking, oh my God, this is a fraud. This man is being taken by, I mean, what do we do as a coach?
Well, what is the client there for?
Let's say, let's think here. I would say it probably is something in the love space. I would imagine.
Here, how about this? Should I keep sending? I don't make a lot of money. Like, I'm pretending I'm a client. Not that I actually write love letters and send money to people online.
His truth comes out, everyone. His truth comes out.
Let's not make this the main goal, though. If I have a client that says, okay, I want to save $10,000 by the end of the year, and it comes up within this discussion that he is giving money to his internet girlfriend who he's never met, that they've been exchanging emails. And it's clear that this woman is very important to him. He's in love with her, but he is sending her money on a regular basis. What line of questioning do we take with that client?
Okay, you're giving a idea of who this client is, but not what they're coming in for the work. That's the piece that's missing.
I want to save $10,000 by the end of the year.
Okay, let's talk about your budget. Well, I give catfish over here. I give catfish $20 a week. I give this. Okay, so based on your what you've shared, how do you presume you're going to get to $10,000? That's where I'm going to keep working it. And not in comparison, but just, there's plenty of people who tithe, and they tithe in abundance of tithing to their churches and whatever their belief system is. It's kind of that same, I can't tell that person that their belief system is wrong.
I could imagine a ton of coaches, though, getting lost in that space of asking around, wanting their client to have that aha moment, you're being catfished.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that could be seriously dangerous, because that relationship could be what is getting your client out of bed every day. And so you have to be very,
you don't know enough. You just don't know enough.
Going down that path as a coach.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I think it would be obvious if the client wanted that to be brought out as okay, I need this to be brought out as a fraud, or if he was behaving very protectively of that relationship and that was present. As a coach, I would stop asking.
Yeah. Right? I wouldn't coach on it unless they asked.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
unless they,
by the same merit, though, isn't it important to coach, if we're not talking about strictly, coaching the problem or coaching how are you going to save $10,000 in a year? Aside from that, because that could lead to a very short session, if you're coaching the why and you're coaching the emotional anchor of what's going on in that situation and comes up, wouldn't it lead naturally in the course of coaching as to what are you trying to get? Like, what is this $10,000 actually buying you, essentially? Mm-hmm. Maybe not using that terminology, but what are you getting from that $10,000?
What's the end game? Yeah.
And then go from there just to find out, like, what is this $10,000?
I'm gonna buy a boob job for my internet girlfriend.
Yeah. Okay. What is your internet girlfriend having big old titties? What does that get for you? Why?
And she's gonna move in with me.
Okay, so right there, then I would be like, does that naturally follow, though? If you buy somebody something, does that mean that they'll do what you want? Or has this been agreed to? And you can explore that situation further. and let them come to their own conclusions.
It would be so hard for me though, and this happens. This very
It does
much
happen.
I have
It
been
does
in,
happen.
I have been in a situation sort of on a receiving end of this where I had to stop having contact with somebody because he was delusional about he was not in touch with reality about what was going on, and I felt morally responsible to end interaction with this person because I was like, you're not understanding, you're not in reality, and it's not healthy. So what do you do with somebody who's in that? That would be so hard for me to be like, oh,
So is it the coach's responsibility also, as part of being a coach? And I don't know all the core competencies off the top of my head, but is it the responsibility of the coach to challenge assumptions and challenge delusions? Now, delusions might be
not delusions.
It might so it might be that might be assuming a lot, but is it the responsibility of the coach to challenge the assumptions that the client is making and either help the coach connect the dots or justify their beliefs?
Again, it's going to depend on what they're there for and what direction, but yes, we do definitely challenge their beliefs. We can, like Brooke will often say, let's play devil's advocate. I'm going to be the contrarian here. Or you, Anthony, are often the contrarian. But
No, I believe everything I
that challenge is definitely a place, by announcing, it's a tool. It's all right if we use a devil's advocate tool here in this space to see where and what really resonates for you. Yeah, you would invite that tool in, ask for permission, and then go down that path. I think my keyboard is dying.
I think that is it a responsibility of us as the coach to somehow prep the client, get them. I mean, I can't get them to be. I can't do that. I can't get them to anything, right? Part of me goes, I want to protect this person. I want to prepare them for the worst. I want to prepare them. I really desperately want to do this but it's not my responsibility.
So that's the referral that we're talking about because it's beyond our scope of practice to refer out to that.
How do I refer? He's otherwise a perfectly functioning, healthy human being. He's working. He's going about his life. Who do I refer to?
I don't know if a referral would be necessary.
It depends. It depends on, if we're going to that extreme. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, in this hypothetical situation, the person is willingly giving away tens of thousands of dollars as a goal. I think it would just be the responsibility of the coach to dig deeper, to try to see if logically, and have the client explain how does spending $10,000 get them what they actually want, and what happens if they don't get what they want. Where will they be at if that isn't the case? And you're exploring, if it's sure or not that they'll get love and attention and whatever it is that they want. But I don't know if a referral in that case would be necessary because
it's a made-up scenario. So in made-up scenarios, we could do the worst extreme to the easiest extreme. The bottom line is be prepared. Be prepared to coach that whole person and not just the topic of what we're seeing. That whole person is part of whatever that story is. So Anthony, you're right. It could go either way.
It does feel a bit like a ticking time bomb, right? Like because we feel like, okay, we know, who knows, right? Here's the flip side, right? Here's the devil's advocate. It might work out, right? It might actually happen. And sometimes those things actually, mind you, we're assuming because 90% of the time it doesn't happen, but there's that 10% and maybe they are. And now we've done damage because we assumed it wouldn't.
Right.
And even if it doesn't work out, maybe that lesson is what that client needs. Who are we to stand in the way or try to stop them from having what they need?
And that's our delusion as a coach, right? Is that, to bring it back, our delusion as a coach, that we know what the outcome will be. That we have some innate magical knowledge that is more informed than our client and can predict the future and say, this is how this will go. Because the truth is, we have no idea.
I feel like in this scenario, there's a bit of context that's being lacked. Just because you're not going to, it seems like we're kind of trying to get to the root of this. And to me, it feels like maybe in one conversation, there's going to be work that's going to take place in between sessions. And that's part of the process. I think you have to let that play out before ultimately coming to a conclusion, as again, the worst case scenario would be referring out.
Amazing. Amazing. Sorry, Lisa. Amazing point too. If we go with the thing, we're coaching, what happens often is the goals transform. So it might start there, but by the end, you have no idea what you may be working on with your client in truth.
There was very few clients that I've referred out, very few. And it was never, well, that's not true. There was one that was on the first session because it was clearly not my thing to work on. But mostly there's so much other things to work on as well. Even if you do refer out, that one piece, you know, how often do we only use one piece and it completes a job, or there's only so many pieces. So that one expression that needs that other licensed professional may not be the only thing that gets spoken about, and giving that space for them to come to their own conclusions once they understand the process and the practice of what, you know, us being certified coaches are. They fall in that experience and they start building on their own empowerment. And that right there is golden. That empowerment, if I start telling them what they should and shouldn't be doing, I'm not empowering them. I'm feeding my ego because I got all the answers. Which is delusional.
An example or thing. Who can I put on a hot seat? Who can I throw in the hot seat? Volunteers. Jen, you're awesome. You're awesome. So Jen, has there ever been a time that somebody has given you a piece of advice that you just didn't listen to? And then you later found out or thought to yourself, shoot, I should have, that they were right. I shouldn't have done this.
Yes, of course.
Of course, yeah. An example, can you think of an example?
Yes.
Would you like to share the example?
I'm trying to place my words carefully here. In my last job, I used to complain a lot, and I got the advice a lot that I needed to leave. But I didn't. I stayed longer. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I followed my own guidance of there's something left for me to learn here. And that actually was true. But at the same time, I could have also left way before I did.
Then you wouldn't be here with us. So no, you couldn't.
Now for sharing that, you're fired. Get out.
May I ask what kept you from leaving?
A few things. I was comfortable, and I had a lot of doubt of what else was out there and what else I could do. I had a lot of negative thoughts about myself and what I was able to do, which evolved over the time that I was there to where I was able to leave.
So when you're in that moment, that Jen, I'm not talking about this Jen, I'm not talking about this current Jen, but that Jen, what were there any delusions you were perpetuating?
Yes. Yes. I thought that I could change things. I thought that I could make things better. And at the end of the day, if I did, it was temporary. I didn't have any real control over that environment at that job.
If you had been in a room with a coach and they had just said to you, you have no control, or did you have anybody say to you, you have no control over that you can't do anything, you're not going to make any change, would that have had any effect on your decision to stay or go?
Yeah, I actually would have stayed to spite that coach. I would have been like, no, I'm going to show you. No, I don't believe you.
Boom. No, right there. That in itself is a very interesting response, right? It speaks a bit to fuel and friction. That moment where you think, okay, wait, I'm gonna lay it on her and tell her the truth right here. We're gonna break this delusion, and she's going to go, oh, well, you're wrong. I'm gonna show you wrong.
I would have doubled down. I would have doubled down, and I would have gone further into my own beliefs about, no, I do have the ability to create change here.
Well, and not only that coach would have lost you because you no longer believe in that coach because they are not clearly listening to what you're saying. They're too busy trying to solve your issue.
Or yes, if you're mean, I keep going to the coach so that they can see I proved them wrong.
But what you didn't know is that the coach was using reverse psychology, proving to Jen that she did have the power within herself to change or create.
I think though, if a coach had said that to me, I wouldn't have felt supported. Mm-hmm. I mean, it would have been that simple. I just would have felt like, okay, that doesn't empower me when you tell me that I can't do that. So
as a coach, what would have been the best place for them to support you in that moment, or way, I should say?
Focusing on my beliefs on why I needed to stay, or why, I was afraid to leave or take a risk, or focusing on that and building up my beliefs about myself and my ability, that would have moved me out of that job fast.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's very much coach the person, not the problem, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like to the nth degree.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. I think that was a real life example, and it is a subtler, like we were talking in more grandiose terms, right? But this is a more subtle, realistic situation in which you have a client that is, we may as a coach say to ourselves, okay, she's deluding herself. She's not going to make any change here. And it's just going to spin her wheels and be stuck there. And I'm trying to help. I'm genuinely in my space of, I'm trying to help in this space and save her some time and energy. And the truth is that by me offering solutions and trying to help, I'm doing more damage because I'm keeping her in that situation because it's backfiring. So if you are instead focusing on Jen and coaching the person and not the problem and not offering the solutions, she then feels supported and grows the self-esteem to move out of that situation on her own.
Well, imagine she believed that coach, right? She bought into what that coach was telling her. She would have left her job, but her self-esteem is still not where she said she felt she wanted it.
Yeah.
What would have happened then?
That's exactly it. I wouldn't have had the job that I have now because I would have stayed in that place of unworthiness and, I'm not good enough or smart enough, or I don't have, this degree or that degree. All that was limiting in my head. And I was presenting myself that way. where once I built up my self-esteem and really was able to validate, like, oh, I am worthy. Look at all these reasons why. Then I was able to, you know, step forward with completely different energy. And that translates. I mean, that translates when you first spoke to me. I'm sure you could tell that I felt good about myself, that I didn't feel scared and insecure. I mean, I was a little nervous on the first interview, I'll admit, but I also believed in myself. And I think that if I had left earlier, that I wouldn't have carried that with me. I didn't have it yet.
There we go.
So solving someone's problem is not, we're not engineers. We're not engineers where we have to figure out, you know, if we're a plumbing engineer, we have to figure out where the blocks are and where we have to figure out what the solution to create the release of that blockage. That's the client's job. They're the engineer of their world.
Can I flex into a different verbiage really quick for the sake of the topic, but exact same concept, Lisa, just to sort of add on to it? We're not here to break our clients' delusions, to show them the truth, right? That's not our job. If our client has a delusion, is holding it, it's our job to be curious about what that delusion is, how it is serving them, what purpose and why they need it, why how they're using it, and then it's up to them to decide if they need to keep it or leave it. That's up to them. It's not up to us.
Yeah. How is it serving them? That's the most important thing. It doesn't matter what the thought is. Is it serving them? Is it not serving them? And the client recognizing for themselves that thought isn't serving them, that delusion isn't serving them. That's what's powerful. Or is, exactly. Right.
And so just to build on this, as you're talking, both of you, I was thinking about shadow work and that concept where, you know, our thoughts are, when we are upset, our negative selves come out and blah, blah, blah. There's a space that negative self serves a purpose. And, you know, oftentimes in coaching, I'll say, well, how did that serve you? And everybody will say in that, because they'll assume it's a negative space, you know, well, it doesn't. Well, that's not true. There is some fashion that it does serve you. Think about the areas where it has helped you. So it's helping them identify, if we're going to use the word delusion, where the delusion enhances their life versus the delusion that it takes away from their whatever, safe space, calmness, whatever word you want to put in there. And know that we're not doing extreme kinds of discussion here. It's just in that space where I don't know, let's just say, I don't know if I want to stay in this relationship. Do you think I ought to leave? We fight all the time. Well, when has that fight served you? Well, when I've had to hold my ground because I was being convinced that this was a different way that I needed to go. And that's not the way. Just the same thing you did, Jen. Same thing you shared.
So I think a big lesson in this is that, one, when we say delusion, I think there's we innately assume it's a bad thing, right? Yeah. We innately assume that, oh no, if we're delusional, oh, that's a bad situation to be in. The truth is, we're all delusional. And it's okay.
Except empathy.
Yes, but also being delusional is also beneficial. There's been, in the research that we did in the articles we read, the delusions that we tell ourselves help us keep us going through the day. And it is very likely that the less delusional you are, the more of an objective view you have of reality, the more likely you are to be depressed
or anxious. Well, it's not just depressed, to be anxious, to be.
Yeah.
The reality is, when something very tragic happens, we have to process that, and we have to, on some level, get to this space of this. It's not going to happen again. It's not going to happen any minute. It's not going to, you know what I mean? Where the truth is, we don't know if that will or if it won't, or you know what I mean. But we have to sort of process it and accept it and shelf it morph it to whatever space it needs to be in so that we can continue on in a space of sort of positivity. But the reality, the people who are very anxious and very people who suffer from PTSD, as somebody who suffers from PTSD, I think one of the most brilliant, it changed my life and perspective of the way I look at people with PTSD is there's nothing wrong with me. The truth is my body is reacting because it's being put in a state of fear, and that means it's functioning. That means that it is doing what it's supposed to do. I something happens, I become afraid. It's my body is doing what it's supposed to do, and as somebody who's been through trauma, that's okay. It means that I'm functioning, right? And it's okay to be scared. That is a good thing. It's not a bad thing. Don't fight it. What's interesting is when you're dealing with that and that trauma and those things is if we don't acknowledge that trauma happened and that it's okay, it makes somebody with PTSD, somebody in those spaces, feel crazy. It makes, the more I pushed it down, the worse it got. The more I denied it, the worse it got. When I sort of accepted it and embraced it, that's when I actually was able to sort of change and function and become, the same fears are there, right? The same threats in my life are there that have always been or haven't been. But what I do now is I don't focus on them, right? They don't become, it becomes, I go, okay, if it happens, it happens. And on some level, that's delusion, because I know if something horrible were to happen, it would suck. But I also know the tremendous amount of energy and stress that comes with worrying about something I don't know if it is or isn't going to happen. It just, we all sort of just wake up every day and assume the sun's going to go up, come up, and everything's going to be okay. We go about our lives, and that is an important state that we all find in order to maintain sanity, which is just this kind of funny marriage that it's a paradox in many ways.
So it's a healthy coping mechanism in the way that we're defining it. There's unhealthy bits to this coping mechanism, but this, on this side of it, is what we normally consider as unhealthy. There are healthy coping mechanisms within that concept. Yeah.
I'm not even embracing the coping mechanism portion. I'm saying I was mad at my system. Like, I was mad at my body, like myself, because of the way it would react to external stimuli, to things that were out of my control, right? And then I'm having a panic attack, and then, and that exacerbates the problem. Coping mechanisms, that is a whole other realm of like health and how to deal with it, and the healthy and the unhealthy. But I think the first step for me was accepting that what was going on was a natural process, and it allowed me to embrace, I guess, my own quirks in many ways. So same with ADHD. I mean, you got to embrace your quirks.
Can I bring up, there was something in the research that we did that I thought was really interesting. It was when they talked about, they did an exercise with adults and kids, and the adults painted something really good and something really bad. And then they showed it to the kids, and the kids were honest unless the adults gave some sort of indication that they were embarrassed or ashamed that they weren't good at art. And then the kid lied to make the adult feel better. That was so fascinating. Because it makes me think, like, how does that apply to coaching, right? Are we potentially in a situation where the client reveals something where we want to make them feel better, and we then step out of coaching and try to make them feel better? Yeah.
We've had that live a little while ago on why we don't say good job or give praise or show our acknowledgement, because we're not being an objective third party for our clients. By us giving our approval, we're sanctioning whatever it is they're doing, or sanctioning their BS at the worst case scenario. Because I think a lot of coaches get into coaching because they're empathetic. They want to help people. And part of helping people means making them feel good. So sometimes we will say little white lies, or our bias is to make them feel better, and say things that make our clients feel better when really that's not coaching. That's not doing our job.
I think giving maybe some real life example in this space to like bring it from a concept to a real life example. If we have a client that comes in and they are saying to themselves, well, I failed. Today, I told you I'm an ADHD mess today, right? I have 15 projects started, none I'm finished. So I could walk into my coach and go, I started organizing my closet. I stopped halfway through. There's a pile of hangers on the ground right now, and I completely failed. Like this is a abject failure when it comes to closet organization. A little bit of an extreme. It's not. I'm saying to myself on the inside, that's not really a failure because you did make progress and you will fix it. But all these things are going on.
You're already coaching yourself, but
yeah, I know. But as a coach, if I'm going in there and I'm in this state of yeah, no, I messed up. I messed up. I didn't do a good job. I failed at it, and I'm beating myself up. Right? You have that client that's being. I could see a lot of coaches going, "Hey, no, you didn't. It's okay. Like, don't like trying to put the Band-Aid on it for them. Get them in a space of stop
or
beating up.
they'll do the work for the client and say, but hey, you did this, you made, like, they will do all the work by just telling them, hey, you made progress. Or you shouldn't think of failure as failure. You should think of it as falling forward towards, like, they'll just say, I mean, it would make the session a whole lot shorter if you could just say all that in the first 5 seconds, but that's really not your job. And if I was your coach in that situation, Brooke, I would just say, okay, you failed. How are you going to succeed? If you tell me
I was your coach, go ahead. Sorry, finish, Anthony.
Oh, that was it.
So if I was your coach, I would say, Brooke, what has you focusing on the fact that you started and stopped 15 projects over the fact that you started 15 projects?
Well, because I have ADHD and I know that is a symptom that my ADHD, like when you have it, I know that I've had to make a conscious choice to be aware of when I begin and complete things. And I know that when I'm not completing things, I am, it makes me a little crazy. Why? Because I feel like the ADHD is winning right at that point. And it's kind of it's a symptom for me. Is it a permanent state for me? No. Does it mean that I'm not capable of finishing those things? I guess where it bothers me is, and where I get hard on myself, and now you're getting to our honest space, is I go, well, why, what is it about you that can't just finish it? Like, why do you just drop it and move to the next thing and just drop it and move to the next thing? Go back and finish it. You know what I mean? And I don't. And it sometimes feels like it happens before I even know it happens. Right. And then now I look around and I'm like, oh my God, I've got things. I have all these things I've just created. I can create a mess faster than anybody for myself to do and to finish and to complete. And so I guess it's less about the fact that I began 15 projects and more about the fact that I've made more work for myself. But ultimately I know I'll get it done, and it's not that bad of a situation. Honestly, this isn't really eating me up that bad, but I guess a Brooke that was in a less mentally healthy state, it would have been a bit of I would have beat myself up a bit over it. But this Brooke knows, no, I'll get it all hung up and get it handled, and it'll get done in a good amount of time because I've made some changes and I've been on my butt about finishing things again.
Now, are you just deluding yourself?
No, in this case, I'm not. Right. I refuse to allow it to be a delusion. You know what's scary though? An honest delusion that I wonder about myself sometimes, because I do tell myself often I'm capable of changing. Like, I'm capable of becoming the person that is clean all the time and has everything put away and organized. I'm capable of this and it will accomplish it. I'm taking steps towards it all the time. But there is a chance I am just not capable. And that's the scary, like, delusion space where I go, oh no, what if that's true?
So wait, can we finish, please, Brooke? I'm so curious. So you said that you know you're going to eventually pick everything back up, follow through with it, and get everything done. So I still don't
tomorrow.
understand.
I will.
I still don't understand, I guess, what makes this a problem for you.
I guess it's not. I mean, it's not genuinely a problem. I just know that it's not. It's like a big light being shined on us. It's something I would rather not have happen, I guess you could say. Like, I guess it's one of those things where, and thank you for pointing this out in the way that you have, is that it's that grass is always greener, right? In my head, I imagine that for other people, they don't do this. It's all, everybody else has it figured out. It's much easier, and they go about their lives and everything. Everything's. This doesn't happen to other people, so something is clearly wrong with me that this happens to me. But the truth is, there's really probably nothing wrong with me. It's just my process.
Now you're doing a comparison trap too.
What?
You're doing a comparison trap now too.
I'm comparison trapping myself, and that's what I just realized. I mean, I never thought of it that way, right? I am assuming that because of that, and I'm also assuming that anybody would know it. I mean, you guys only know this because I'm sharing it, truthfully, right? Otherwise, it's only my issue to deal with. It's not affecting anybody else.
You tell just by looking at you.
So I would go to with you and just as, reflecting what you've shared. You've shared that you started 15 projects. You focused in on one of them, which were the clothes that you have moved around. You have identified, the acceptance on how you are and how you operate. You've shared with us the ability to set a standard and know that you have followed through. You have compared yourself to others, but in some sense, it's just something of who you are. When you think about what you've shared, what's that perfect question for you right now?
My perfect question for me right now, honestly, in this space, because if I'm 100% honest, I'm not mad at myself because I have genuinely made progress. Like I've been putting my laundry away, and right now I have taken the closet out and organized it so that I can make more room for the items I have. So I'm actually in a space of, I'm kind of proud of myself despite my 15 ADHD projects, because I know they're going to get completed and it's progress. Yeah. And I see the progress. So I guess the question to ask me in this space that would be, I have a productive, my brain goes to two different spaces because I'm analytical. So I have the emotional question and then I have the analytical question. So the analytical question, the productive question would be, Brooke, when are you going to get these projects done so that you can hold yourself accountable and keep going in this space of being proud of yourself and keep yourself in that state of that mental state of you're doing good, you're still making progress. And the best thing for me to do to continue on that path is then to set myself a deadline for when these things get wrapped up, a realistic one. And realistically looking around the house, it will all be done by tomorrow afternoon. And I can make that commitment to you.
And how are you going to feel tomorrow afternoon when you're envisioning that all of it's going to be done by tomorrow afternoon? How are you?
What was it? How
are you feeling?
Oh,
you're in. Mm-hmm.
I'll be thrilled, but I'll be ready to start the next project.
Yeah.
Exactly. Brooke, what would it be like for you to focus on the fact that you're about to have 15 projects done?
I mean, that's going to be awesome. Yeah. If I'm honest, like I'm going to be really happy when it's like when I have space in my closet and everything's like, I just organize it so that my short sleeves are here and they're all color coordinated. My long sleeves are here. They're all color coordinated, but you know what I mean? And I just did all of that and I got rid of anything that doesn't fit or doesn't make me feel good or has a spot on it or a state that isn't going to come out. I'm not going to try to salvage it. It's just going. And I feel really, 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 really good. Like, and so as I make these little things, these little steps, and nobody else may notice, but I will, and my life will be a little better. I'm thrilled. Like, and so it's going to be awesome. And I'm excited, if I'm honest. So
it's so funny. We're all in the private. We have a private chat going on as well. We're all saying, "Oh, I just started that too," and I just started that too. Yeah, we're all. I don't know. It must be the April, May, June, whatever month we're in.
I want to start it, and I'm inspired by just hearing you talk about it, Brooke. Like, I'm like, let's go, let's do it.
Mind you, I had to get to the point of like fed up. Like, I had to get to the point of just like, okay, this is just something has got to give. And so I got there, and now I've just created some very strict rules with myself with regard to what keeps. I was given an amazing piece of advice, right? This is a piece of advice I was actually given. I know it's counterintuitive saying this, but it resonated with me, and that was, Brooke, don't you ever buy another hanger for the rest of your life. You do not get to buy any more hangers. Why? Because that means you're buying more clothes. No, that's not okay. You buy something, then you go through your closet, you find something you don't wear, you get rid of it, and you put that one in. And I was like, that is brilliant, because I have bought so many hangers, more hangers than fit in my closet. And it was, I think it was from a professional organizer. It was like, that's probably the best piece of advice I've ever been given, and I'm going to abide. In fact, I'm going to get rid of hangers. We had a share from a Facebook user. I just want to highlight it. And they had a breakthrough, and always want to celebrate those, even though we're not supposed to, and we're coaches. And also, thank you for sharing. Thank you for being vulnerable and sharing that as well. And I think that's our time. So we are done. We're over time. You're babbling. Now I'm going to let anybody else close this. I'm done. I've had enough speaking. Who's closing us out? You guys don't all volunteer all at once.
So thank you so much, everyone, for being here to discuss our delusions. We have many delusions in the good coping way. Thank you so much for being here. We certify life coaches in 3 days. Certified Life Coach Institute. We're so honored that you were here. Thank you for being here. Join us again next Tuesday at 4 Pacific Standard. I don't know what we're discussing. I never know what we're discussing. It's kind of like one of those things. What are we discussing next week? Do we have that?
I can tell you right now. Give it 1 moment. Also, I want to say I'm proud of us for doing what we normally do, and that is to put a positive spin on things that people traditionally think are negative. I like that is something we often do.
No, I could have easily gone.
I know you could have, and I was prepared fully for you.
Yeah,
I still want to do the CLCI after dark and have that discussion.
Yeah. But also, we're talking about being anti-fragile next week.
Oh, there we go.
How to not be a sissy and stuff like that.
Okay.
I don't know. I see that all the time on like men's blogs and stuff like that, being anti-fragile. So that'll be fun to talk about.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about this. It's a concept, a buzzword, a thing that's happening right now. Anti-fragility. What is it? What does it mean? How is it different from being resilient? We will find out.
Yeah.
I think I'll show up eating tree bark. That'll be the intro, just to how it's like to not be anti-fragile.
I'm going to come in wrapped in bubble wrap. That's what I'm going to do. So.
You're going to come in as fragile.
And wearing a helmet.
You're going to be safe.
I've always said you needed one of those, Brooke.
I do. I need a helmet and a leash.
All right, that's going to end this.
You guys.